Here, see, I'm just cleaning off the gunk, which actually is quite a bit, underneath where the sticker is going to go. Label, which I've already peeled, says MIDI in, MIDI out. I'm going to clean out the inside of the case a little bit too while I have it open, just to get some of the gunk out of here, see if I can pick up any loose metal. Probably better to use a rag, but this paper towel will do. See, there's a piece of metal. You know, if a piece of metal were to fall somewhere on the processor board or something, it would possibly short something out. If it fell on the power supply, that might be a big problem. It might be a problem for you as the user getting electrocuted, and also a problem for the synth getting shorted out. Or see, there's a little bit of metal in here that I'm catching right now. This is the power supply, and these caps here, this big cap and these two big caps were replaced. Some of the original caps were a different type of cap, but I replaced all of them with modern electrolytic type caps. I think the other ones were tantalum. This is the thing that holds these big caps in place. I got one with this wonderful bubblegum colored wire holding the thing in place, but there's a hole for screw down here, which the screw was missing when I got it. Maybe we'll go to something you should have if you work on any sort of equipment is a large assortment of screws, which I've got a lot of screws and jars full of screws over there. Get this out of the way while we're here. Those look good. That looks good. Yes, the synth has now become the workbench. There are one. And maybe you want like a lock washer so this doesn't come undone quickly, which maybe I do or maybe I don't have. Alright, so now we're going to try to put this thing back together. Fortunately, I put the jacks in correctly and all that is put back together. We're going to try to put the MIDI part back in here. I've reassembled these cables we took apart earlier. It's the MIDI board, P5 MIDI 2.1. And this basically is an interesting little piece because this chip right here used to go into this socket. Now this board plugs in where that socket was and takes this place of it. So I'm going to put this back into its socket. Honestly, there's probably a better way to have done this, I'm sure, but this thing doesn't like to stay in once it gets in here sometimes. Alright, that's back in. Then we're going to re-plug all this stuff back in. This is the digital controller, which I had disconnected before, which I'll have to plug that in later. The main one is the power supply. Got to make sure this lines up correctly. Last but not least, the audio cable, which, as you remember, I marked this so I could tell which side went out. So this is the outside. Plug back in. Those jacks are now in place. I screwed them in and they're nice and tight. The other two jacks are back in place. I gotta tighten those up maybe a little bit more, but let's get this digital cable plugged back in. Oh, look, I'm bleeding. Now let's find out if she still works. Really, we don't see any smoke.
I'm praying, man. Oh!
No, that's still not right.
No?
No. Alright, that's close, but
No cigar.
no cigar, yeah. MIDI board is like really touchy, and the person who designed this kit like put too much tape on these friggin' things, so it's like kinda, make sure this is all plugged in. Oh, there it goes. Now it seems to be happy. Happier. When the Prophet-5 turns on, what happens is, here, we're going to do it in 1 second, but it goes through an automatic tuning. So here, let's watch. That's that light over there says tune. First it tunes. Takes a little while, tunes up all the oscillators. And then there you go, it's on. It's working. It should be working fine. If it doesn't lock up, it seems to be working. Let's see if we're getting audio out of it now. Look, we didn't even lose my patches. back in business. Now we need to test the MIDI though, that's next. To set the MIDI channel, you hold down the record button. 8 changes the MIDI channel, so watch the screen. I have this set up to be on 7 in my setup. And then 6 will shut off the Omni mode. And then you're now in single channel mode. So let's see if we can control this from somewhere else. MPC has 2, an A and a B MIDI out, so you can do 2 sets of 16. So there we are. Why am I... MIDI is working. And I can control from this too. And then you hear the Juno. Installing the initial MIDI kit, there was a little bit more to it. Like I had to take a couple of the boards out and cut a few of the traces in the boards. So like, do I have a PCB board? So like, not that this PCB board represents anything in the Prophet, but you know, I'd have to, on some of the boards inside of here, I had to like take a razor and scrape away, these are basically wires going between the different points. I had to cut a couple of them inside of the Prophet. I had to run a couple of wires between points where I'd cut the, like, basically to reroute things, I had to run a couple of small wires to reroute signals from one place to another to correspond to how the MIDI kit worked as opposed to how it worked when it was just set up for CV gate control. So there was a little bit more than what we did, but what we just did was the heavy mechanical part of it, which is actually honestly probably harder than doing the actual electronic install if you're confident with soldering and cutting wires and not afraid to mess things up a little bit and figure it out. So this is probably the more time-consuming part, drilling the holes and putting in the jacks. That's the Prophet-5 MIDI kit. I'm Ross Kelly. You're watching GearWire.com.